So I was really struggling to choose between the new iPhone 8 Plus and the Galaxy Note 8. So I asked my little nephew Ollie to see what he thought, and he wasn't sure either. He's so cute. But it's true, both these phones have a lot going for them. And while there definitely isn't as much hype around the 8 Plus as there is with the new iPhone 10, not everyone can afford to splash out $1,000 on a phone. And actually, the Note 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus here are pretty similar in terms of pricing, with the 8 Plus starting at £799 versus $869 for the Note 8. So there's only about 70 quid in it. So what are the differences? Which is better, and which one should you buy? Side by side, I think the Galaxy Note 8 blows the iPhone 8 Plus out of the water in terms of design, especially from the front. I still think the 8 Plus looks great, especially putting them back to back like this, and the new glass body is definitely a step up from the aluminium on the older iPhones. It's less slippery in the hand and feels more sturdy. But this is the 4th year we've seen the same design from Apple, and next to the Note 8, or even the iPhone 10, it simply looks old-fashioned. The phones are roughly the same size, yet the Note 8's thinner bezel and higher screen-to-body ratio means you're getting a much bigger, well, taller, 6.3-inch display versus 5.5 on the 8 Plus. They are both big phones though, so do expect to do a little bit of finger gymnastics if you want to use them one-handed. And I have to say, I do quite like having a USB-C port and a headphone jack on the Note, neither of which you get on the iPhone. Both phones have fantastic displays, among the best on the market, but on paper, the Note 8 once again comes out on top, with a higher resolution, more vibrant and brighter AMOLED panel, as well as support for high dynamic range. The iPhone 8 Plus does now offer True Tone, which adjusts the screen's color based on the ambient lighting around you, which is actually really useful, but that's about it. There's not a whole lot new here, and considering the iPhone 10 offers a gorgeous edge-to-edge HDR OLED screen, the 8 Plus just feels a little bit stuck in the past. Now, measuring performance is always tricky when you're comparing an Android phone with an iPhone. Both are insanely fast, and honestly, I think we're kind of at the stage now where it's difficult to see much difference in terms of speed and responsiveness in general use. The 8 Plus uses Apple's new A11 Bionic chip, along with 3 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of built-in storage, and also has the power to support the new AR kit, which means developers can create apps and games using augmented reality on the iPhone. The Note 8, on the other hand, uses the latest Snapdragon 835 processor or the Exynos 8895, depending on where you live. It's also got 6 gigs of RAM, which is 50% more than the S8 and twice as much as the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, this extra RAM doesn't really make much difference in general use, as I think it's primarily there for the processing of the new dual camera setup. The Note 8 also has 64 gigs of storage built in, but it does support micro SD cards, up to 256 gigabytes. So which is faster? Well, they're both really powerful, and it does come down to software, iOS 11 versus Android 7. And you probably already have a preference about which one you prefer. If you're heavily invested in iOS and use things like iMessage all the time, then that's a good reason to stick with the iPhone. But I do have to admit, I prefer Android at the moment. And while Samsung's Experience UI is still a bit clunky sometimes, and may not be as consistently smooth as the iPhone, you can easily add custom skins and themes, or even reduce the animation times in the settings to make it feel a lot faster. So it is very much personal preference. And of course, they'll play any app or game flawlessly from the app stores. So I'm going to call that a tie. Go with the one with the software that you prefer using, and don't worry about millisecond differences in app loading times or animation speeds. Now let's talk about the cameras. Both of these phones offer dual lens cameras. The iPhone 8 has two 12 megapixel sensors with one f1.8 main and an f2.8 telephoto lens. The Note 8 also has dual 12 megapixel cameras, but they do have slightly wider apertures with f1.7 on the main and f2.4 on the telephoto. So the Note's cameras will let in a bit more light and should therefore be better in darker conditions. But aside from the tech specs, the 8 Plus offers a new studio lighting portrait mode, which can give you some really cool and artistic effects to photos. But the Note 8 also offers a portrait mode, although Samsung call it live focus, which I think works really well and makes your subject stand out. But I think the most technically impressive feature on the iPhone 8 Plus is that you can now shoot 4K 60 video. No other smartphone can do it. This one tops out at 4K 30. Although recording at 4K 60 does use 400 megabytes per minute, which is crazy. And standard 4K 30 uses about 170. So if you're going to shoot loads of 4K 60, I would probably go for the 256 gigabyte version of the 8 Plus. But the main advantage of the Note 8 over the iPhone is that both lenses support optical image stabilization, which means you can use the telephoto lens and everything is still really smooth and stable. That's particularly helpful in low light. Whereas if you use the telephoto lens on the 8 Plus, you'll notice it's a lot shakier and it's a little bit harder to get smooth, blur-free shots. But it's fair to say that both the iPhone and the Note's cameras are exceptional, two of the very best on the market, and it is difficult to choose between them. 4K 60 is nice, but then so is dual OIS, and they both have cool portrait modes. So I'm going to call it a tie when it comes to the camera, and I reckon I'll be doing a more in-depth camera review of the iPhone and also versus some of the other flagships very soon, so make sure you subscribe for that. In terms of battery life, the 8 Plus offers pretty much the same battery as the 7 Plus, as even though the new A11 chip is more efficient, the actual battery cell is smaller, which is a bit of a shame. Similarly, the Note 8 here lasts about the same time as the S8 Plus, despite having a smaller 3300 mAh battery. So I've used both of these for a good few days now, and I would say after a full day of use, the Note 8 tends to have around 20% of its battery left at the end of the day, whereas the iPhone's was closer to 30%. So I'd say the iPhone does just come out on top in terms of overall battery life. And thankfully, Apple have also caught up in the charging department. Both the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus now support wireless and fast charging. But then again, so does the Note 8, although you do need to buy the optional fast charger from Apple in order to get that, which is a bit of a shame. Now we can't talk about the Note 8 without mentioning the S Pen. And I have to say, that before I got this, I wasn't really that bothered about an S Pen. I mean, who wants a stylus in 2017? But I actually find myself using it way more than I thought I would, whether it's jotting down quick notes using the screen off memo feature, or taking screen grabs and recording GIFs using the Smart Select tool. I don't think the S Pen is like reason enough to buy the Note 8 over the 8 Plus alone, but it is definitely a unique selling point, and I think you'd be surprised how much you end up using it. But one other difference, which is quite noticeable, is speaker quality. You may not care about that on a phone, but the iPhone 8 Plus's speakers are a lot better than the Note's.
I think I know where my dad went.
That's right in the middle of the Devil's Sea.
I think I know where my dad went.
That's right in the middle of the Devil's Sea.
I have to say that I do feel just a little bit annoyed by Apple. I mean, as I say, we've seen the same design 4 years in a row. No headphone jack, no USB-C, you have to pay extra to get fast charging. And above all that, they've literally called the iPhone 10, which costs 200 quid more, the future of smartphones. So how anyone can go out and buy this and get excited about it, I'm not really sure. On the other hand, the Note 8 is arguably not a huge step up over the S8 Plus either. It's got a 0.1 inch bigger screen, second camera, 2 more gigs of RAM, and the S Pen. But if you're not bothered about the camera or the S Pen, you may as well go for the S8 or the S8 Plus and save some money. So the big question, which is better? Well, I've read lots of reviews and comparisons between these phones, and most people tend to sit on the fence and call it a draw. And while I would definitely stick with the phone with the software that you're used to using, personally, I think the Note 8 comes out on top overall. Although I'm looking forward to comparing it to the new iPhone 10 in a few weeks, so make sure you subscribe for that. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, which I hope you did. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.